Welcome back to Don't Waste the Chaos, the podcast where we embrace the challenges of life and business, using them to grow, thrive, and succeed. I'm your host, Kerri Roberts, and today we're tackling a topic that's as practical as it gets: metrics. Now, we all know metrics matter. They're the heartbeat of a business, giving you a clear pulse on what's working and what's not. Making decisions based on data rather than emotion is the smarter and more obvious choice. But the question is, what should you be measuring? Now, if you're a small to mid-sized business owner or high-level leader, you're likely juggling a lot already. So today, I've curated a list of 5 key areas of metrics that you should be tracking to evaluate your 2024 performance and prepare for a stellar 2025. I'd recommend you grab a notebook, send this episode to the data cruncher on your team, or just sit back and soak it all in. And hey, if you're not measuring much right now, don't worry. There's no shame in starting fresh. So let's dive in. The first area that I would recommend you look at your metrics is in the revenue and profitability area. So let's talk about these. These are the big picture indicators of business health and efficiency. Revenue shows growth, and profitability tells how well you're managing your expenses. Both are critical to understanding your financial stability. So here are the key metrics I'd recommend inside of this category of revenue and profitability. The first is year-over-year revenue growth. This tracks how much your business has grown in sales compared to the previous year. So how do you measure this? I would subtract last year's revenue from this year's, divide by last year's revenue, and multiply by 100. So the data that you'll need is a revenue report from your accounting software like QuickBooks or wherever you're tracking that, or an Excel doc. So that's what we're looking for: year-over-year revenue growth. The next thing that you can measure when it comes to revenue and profitability is your net profit margin. This tells you what percentage of revenue is left after covering all of your expenses. So how do you measure this? You would divide your net profit by total revenue and then multiply that by 100. And you would use your profit and loss statements to calculate this one. The third thing you'd need to calculate when you're looking at revenue and profitability is reoccurring revenue. This is a goldmine metric for subscription-based or repeat customer models. I would identify the percentage of total revenue coming from reoccurring sources every single year. You want to know where your money's coming from and what product line or service line they're coming from. This is going to be key. So you want to analyze what's driving your growth or analyze what's eroding your profitability and make adjustments to pricing or cost structure. So area number 1 was your revenue and profitability metrics. You're tracking year-over-year growth, net profit margin, and your reoccurring revenue. So the second area we want to look at data out of these 5 key areas I've identified is customer acquisition and retention. These metrics are about balancing the need to bring in new customers while keeping your current ones happy. And a lot of times we're focused on new business growth, and that's very important to keep that pipeline going. But if we are calculating what our client acquisition cost is, we would know it would behoove us to keep our current customers happy just as much as it is to fill that pipeline. So a couple key measures in this area of customer acquisition and retention metrics. The first is your customer acquisition cost, your CAC. I call them clients, customers, patients, whatever segment of business that you're in here. So your customer acquisition cost is going to tell you how much it costs to acquire a new customer. You would get this by dividing total marketing and sales spend by the number of new customers acquired. So in my business, I take a look at how much I pay my marketing coordinator, how much I spend on Flowdesk, which is where I send out my email marketing, how much I spend on Squarespace, which is like all 3 of the websites of my businesses, how much I spend on Riverside, which is where I host my podcast, how much I spend on PlanThat, which is the technology that we use to post all of our social media. So I would take all of those costs, and essentially what I do is, take that annualized cost, and you haven't had it for a whole year, project that out, your annualized cost, and then divide it by the number of clients that have been acquired. And that is the customer acquisition cost. And, I listed all of those expenses. So just buyer beware, this is usually pretty expensive and you need to know what you're spending on it. Okay, second thing that you need to measure when it comes to customer acquisition and retention is your customer retention rate. So this measures how well you're keeping customers over time. You would calculate this by subtracting new customers from the total at the end of a period, divide by the number at the start, and then multiply it by 100. And that's your customer retention rate. Now, in your segment of business, in your industry, I would go into OpenAI or Claude or, whatever AI tool that you're using. And I would say, what's the best practice for, the metric of customer retention? In my world, it's for HR consulting. So what's the best practice or the benchmarking for customer retention rate in my industry? And that'll tell you what the benchmark is. And then you take your data and then you say, okay, am I measuring on par? Am I below? Am I above? Now this is something that you can tout, or it's something that you can work on. This is going to drive our strategic plan, folks. This data is important. Okay, third area that we're going to measure inside of customer acquisition and retention is the lifetime value. And you might see people call this the LTV. This shows how much revenue you can expect from a single customer over their life cycle. So you calculate this by multiplying the average purchase value, the purchase frequency, and the customer lifespan. So you're going to multiply those together. I took a look at my 2024 data. We just did a look back at all of like the projections for 2024 and then where we landed. And then of course, set the strategic plan for 2025. And it looks like to me, my average client stays with me for 7.8666 months. So I've got somebody like the majority of a year, a little over half the year. And my average client payout per year is just under 19,000. So that gives you some idea of what my clients are doing, but you've got to figure that out for your organization, your industry, your segment, your niche, whatever that is. So those are the three areas inside of customer acquisition. So we have talked about revenue and profitability metrics. Next, we talked about customer acquisition and retention. The three metrics inside of that were customer acquisition cost, customer retention rate, and lifetime value. The third segment I want to talk about is operational efficiency. Now, I love marketing. I love all of this data. I like looking at my P&L, knowing what my OPEX is, my top line revenue, so on and so forth, my EBITDA, but operational efficiency and the people metrics are my jam. So let's jump into this. Operational efficiency is the secret sauce for saving time and money. So let's get into three critical metrics here. The first is revenue per employee. I love this. Once you know what revenue per employee is, you're going to feel so much more empowered to you probably have an idea of this person's efficient, this person's not, this person's awesome with clients, this person's not, so on and so forth. But if you take a look and measure how much revenue each employee generates, that's going to put some data behind your feelings. And in some cases, it might straighten out some of your feelings too. So how do we calculate this? We divide the total revenue by the number of employees. And if you do this by department, that's helpful. Let's say back when I was a COO of an insurance agency, I would take a look at that individual's book of business that they're a part of. That was really important to me in efficiency metrics. But revenue per employee is just a great start in a general sense. Then you can break it down by department. Then you can take it to the employee level if you've got the data around that. But that's really, really important. Next, when it comes to operational efficiency is cycle time for key processes. This is about speed. How long does it take to onboard a customer or onboard a client or to fulfill an order, things like that? So you would calculate this by tracking the start and end times for each key process. When I was at an organization, it was a distribution organization, and it was my first, I would say, big person job when it came to human resources. We did time studies, and I'll tell you, this was intimidating at first to me. I was really curious about how this is going to work. And essentially, there's a website that you can type in to find a calculator for time studies. There's all kinds of softwares you can use out there, but I did it the good old fashioned way because it was $0. We had a stopwatch and we had an Excel doc, and I would have those up at all times. I didn't do this every single day. We did this for 2 weeks. This was part of our job for 2 weeks as an employee was to do time studies on every single thing that we did. And number one, it was eye-opening as an employee to see how much wasted time there was, because if I was tracking all of my time in a day, that's a driving force, right? A lot of our folks waste a lot of time. A lot of us as leaders waste a lot of time. but tracking down every single thing that we do, the start and stop time or duration of every single task that we do would help us to understand what we're doing. One of the cool things that my assistant helped me do to look back at 2024, we essentially took all of my clients. I do time blocking on my calendar, and I'm happy to show you what my calendar looks like. I've got it categorized by color, and I've got blocks for clients. And whether it's calls with clients or project-based time with clients, I track all of the time. I don't do billable hours with hardly any clients. Most of them are on a fractional basis or on a project basis. So I don't say like, I've worked for you for 3 hours and it costs X dollars. Couple of clients I do, but I try not to do that because I want it to be about outcomes and not about time spent. But I digress. My assistant went back to my calendar for 2024 and I asked her to take a look at all the time allocated to each client and then look at what we billed them. And in general, my billable rate is somewhere between $250 and $500 an hour. That's roughly, but for a nonprofit, it's half that. So I've got like a scale of what I charge for clients. And the more time they spend with me, they get bulk pricing, right? So if they are on a fractional contract, if it should cost, so let's say $16,000 a month because of the time spent, I charge them $12,000 a month. Or if it should be costing $12,000, I'm charging them $6,000. It just depends on how many hours I'm spending with them. But she calculated it out for me based on the time that I spent and what we billed, if we build them over or under. And it was eye-opening to see. I've got some clients that I travel for. We added that time in. Very eye-opening. And honestly, it helped me set my price structure for 2025, which is really exciting because now I know I'm going into 25 and I'm setting my packages more accurately and I'm billing more accurately. So I don't have to look at any particular client and say like, oh my gosh, you're draining me or you're just taking everything from me. I'm charging appropriately. That is awesome. But I wouldn't have been able to do that without putting the data on my calendar and my assistant crunching those numbers for me. So it takes a little effort. If you're going to do cycle times, it takes a little effort, but it is so worth it. Okay, the third thing that we want to measure when it comes to operational efficiency is utilization rates. This is a great metric for service-based businesses, which is what I'm in a consulting firm. So we divide our billable hours by total hours worked to see how effectively the team is being utilized. So that's what I was talking about earlier. How much time did we spend? What did we bill? Overage or underage? How did we do? So when it comes to operational efficiency, we've got our revenue per employee, our cycle time for key processes, and our utilization rates. So that's the third key area that we've talked about. So the first segment that we talked about was revenue and profitability metrics. The second place we looked at was customer acquisition and retention. The third place we looked at was operational efficiency. Now we're on number 4, and that is marketing and sales performance. These are the tools to know if our marketing efforts are translating into dollars. And this is important. So many of us, unless it's a Google ad or a Facebook ad, we don't know if our marketing efforts are effective or what the ROI is on them. And I would say at the beginning, when you're first launching a business, you're trying to build brand awareness and things like that. So sometimes there is sunk cost when it comes to marketing, but over time, we want to know, number 1, do we have a fire? And number 2, when it's time to put gasoline on that fire to watch it grow. I am getting ready to wrap up my second year in business, so I'm about to pour the gasoline because I've built a really good brand awareness. We've built up our reputation. And so now it's time to pour on the gas, but we want to make sure that we're looking at these metrics to be guiding us. So the first, when it comes to marketing and sales metrics that we want to look at is our lead conversion rate. This tracks how many leads turn into paying customers. You calculate this by dividing the number of leads converted by total leads and multiply by 100. So I took a look at all of the potential prospects that came my way. Not everybody that I identified as prospects, all of the ones that I actually had a sales call with. So, we went into the process. We weren't sitting outside. We were at the top of the funnel. We're working our way down. And all of those, did they convert? How many clients did I sign? And then that lets me know what my lead conversion rate is. Love that. That's super eye-opening. The next one we want to measure when it comes to marketing and sales is our return on marketing investment. You might call this a ROMI or a ROMI. This shows the revenue you generate for every dollar spent on marketing. So we're subtracting our marketing costs from our revenue, dividing by our marketing cost, and multiplying by 100. So that marketing cost that I talked about earlier, all of the spend, whether it's a marketing coordinator, a social media manager, all of the softwares around that, we want to take that total marketing cost from our revenue, then divided by the marketing cost, and then multiply that by 100. And that is our return on marketing investment. The third area or metric that we want to measure when it comes to sales and marketing metrics is our sales cycle length. And this monitors how long it takes to close a deal. Now, we can't measure that if we're not tracking the data. So a really great way to do this is just to put a Google Doc or a spreadsheet together. Or if you have a CRM, that is excellent. But you want to take a look at the first time you had a conversation with them to when it was you had a signed contract and a start date, your sales cycle length. Now, I would say my business, I'm in a long sales cycle. There's not a whole lot of clients. There's few. Sometimes somebody has something's burning inside of their business when it comes to HR and they need me right now. And that's a little bit easier. But a lot of times somebody comes to me, they're not sure what they want to utilize me for. They know they need some help in HR. So then we have an initial call. We talk through their current setup, and then I send them an email about like what I heard them say and then what I could do for them. And then they either follow up with me or sometimes I have to nudge them again. And then we decide if that's a good fit. And then we go through cost and, it takes a little while, but my sales cycle compared to like an insurance agent or things like that is actually shorter than some others. So again, just as a reminder, in our marketing and sales performance metrics, we want to be tracking our lead conversion rate, our return on marketing investment, and our sales cycle length. We want to shift our focus toward campaigns and channels that deliver the best ROI when it comes to our marketing. Fifth and final area of measurement we want to look at is employee engagement and productivity. We want to talk about keeping our teams motivated, engaged, and ultimately, that's how we drive success. So 3 key metrics in this area. The first is our employee turnover rate. This tracks how often employees leave. You calculate this by dividing the number of employees who left by the average number of employees across the year and multiplying that by 100. And again, if you're like, I don't know, is this high? Is this low? I can give you some general ideas, but I would take a look of in your industry specifically, because like, let's say fast food is going to have a higher turnover than a law office and so on and so forth. So I would take a look, I would put into ChatGPT or OpenAI or call a consultant or whatever. What should this be? Here's where mine's at. Am I high or am I low? If you're doing great, you should tout that on your social media, when you're recruiting or whatever, like our average turnover rate is X. In our industry, it's usually this. So we're doing well. We're obviously treating our employees well, what have you. If you're not doing as well, that is an action plan that you need to tackle for the next year. This is setting your future direction. Okay. So employee engagement and productivity, metric number 2, employee engagement scores. Now, you're not going to have these if you don't conduct annual employee engagement or satisfaction surveys. I highly recommend you do this. And then you'll have year over year data, but you use surveys or pulse checks to gauge morale and satisfaction. This is a project that my firm does for a lot of, we do it for all of our clients, but sometimes we do it as a one-off project as well. Either way, I don't care how you do it, just do it. And if you don't want to do it with a consultant or an outside firm, then internally determine what your questions are. Don't make your survey too super long or people won't complete it, and look for your trend data. And then based on your trend data of what you're seeing, if you're seeing a trend in an area, either an upward trend or a downward trend, and I don't mean year over year, if this is your first year, I just mean like across your employee population, you're seeing that communication and trust is low, or you're seeing that they don't love their employee benefits, or compensation is an issue, or they feel like they don't have the right training and development to do their job, or the right tools to do their job, or the technology, or people aren't living by the values, or whatever it is, the questions that you ask. Then you can say, okay, this looks like an area that we need to focus on. And then you set plans in place. And let's say you're like, I don't even know how to address this. Put a focus group together of employees and say, I want you all to focus on these 3 underperforming areas based on our satisfaction survey or our engagement survey, the data that we came together with. I want you all as employees to put together what you think would positively impact this. Then you have buy-in from employees. Maybe they're your champions and they become your culture committee. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but using your employee engagement scores is huge. Getting the data and doing nothing with it is going to cause a lower engagement the next year, just to let you know. Hot take. Okay. third area that we're going to be tracking when it comes to employee engagement and productivity is our training completion rates. This tracks how well your team is participating in development programs. The easiest way to track this is if you have a learning management system, or in your HR payroll system, you purchase the learning management module. That way, anytime a training is completed, either employees can input that data in a self-service model, the manager can, or if they're doing e-learning, it's automatically going to track for them. But taking a look at training completion rate, 2025, I believe, is going to be the year to bring back learning and development, or a growth and development teams, training and development teams, or at least a structured focus on this. And so it's going to be very important that you're measuring this to make sure that those are actually beneficial programs to your employees. We want to focus on professional development and benefits to improve retention and productivity of our teams. So there were 5 key areas that I recommended that you measure: revenue and profitability metrics. That was year-over-year revenue growth, net profit margin, and recurring revenue. The second area was customer acquisition and retention. We're measuring customer acquisition costs, customer retention rates, and the lifetime value of a customer. Third area was operational efficiency. We're measuring revenue per employee, cycle time for key processes, and utilization rates. That one's perfect for service-based business. The fourth area of measurement is marketing and sales performance. We're measuring lead conversion rates, return on marketing investment, and our sales cycle length. And then of our fifth area, this is employee productivity and engagement. We're measuring employee turnover rate, employee engagement scores, and training completion rates. Data-driven decisions are the cornerstone of successful businesses. These metrics will not only help you understand how your previous year went, but also set you up for an even better 2025. Here's the thing. If you're not tracking much right now, don't be discouraged. The end of the year is the perfect time to start fresh. I'd send these metrics to your data person, or reach out to us. A fractional leader on our team can implement these systems for you in no time. You've got this, and I can't wait to hear about your wins in the new year. Thanks again for tuning in. I know that sometimes tracking things and above and beyond what you're doing as a leader can seem like chaos. It seems like just another job that you're going to have to do. But how do you know if you're succeeding? And how do your team members know if they're succeeding? And how do you measure performance in your organization without the data? So don't waste the chaos. Embrace it. Until next time.